Fellow software developers, don't despair. The AI hype train is completely off the rails again. I'm happy to break down the good, bad, and ugly for you. This is Better Future. I'm Matt Kolbuck. The AI hype train is completely off the rails again, to the point I'm almost starting to smell blood in the water when it comes to these generative AI companies. This latest round is nothing more than a bunch of billionaire technocrats having a demeasuring contest in public. All that happened is back in January, Mark Zuckerberg showed up on Joe Rogan and said, "Oh, by the end of the year, Meta's going to have an AI agent that's as good as a mid-level software developer." Okay, cool. And then shortly after, Sam Altman showed up with, "Yeah, well, pretty soon, OpenAI is going to have a $20,000 per month PhD level supercoder." And then, not wanting to be left out, shortly after, Dario Amodei shows up with, "Yeah, well, within 3 to 6 months, AI is going to be writing 90% of the code. And within 12 months, it'll be writing 100% of the code." And then, of course, needing to get the last word in, OpenAI shows up again with, "Yeah, well, by the end of 2025, we'll have replaced all senior staff level software engineers." I'm sorry, but Jesus Christ, do these people even hear themselves talk? Granted, I get it. When you've sold your soul to greed, you'll blurt out all sorts of absurd BS when tens of billions of dollars of investor funds are at stake. But come on, at least try to have a little bit of self-awareness, especially when you're talking about the potential financial livelihoods of millions of your fellow humans. For the rest of this episode, keep two things in the back of your mind. First, as we all know, big tech derives the majority of its revenue through manipulation and algorithmic exploitation. They deploy sophisticated algorithms to bend our mental faculties, steal our attention, and push ads our way. This is common knowledge, we all know this, so it's pretty safe to assume that they are also manipulating and lying to us when it comes to this whole AI revolution, because that is simply the business model that they landed on. Second, all the AI currently being pushed is still based off the 2017 Transformers architecture. And even with the various modifications they've added, it still contains various fundamental flaws and limitations, which render it incapable of ever being trusted by anything even remotely mission critical. Big tech is well aware of these limitations, but they simply don't care because they have long since been prioritizing profit over actual technology. Don't get me wrong, I would absolutely love it if these LLMs actually worked. I went suddenly and totally blind years ago, and have non-stop ideas of projects to develop out. But understandably, everything takes me a painfully long time these days due to it being all audio-based. So if these things could somehow 5x my turnaround time, that without question that would dramatically improve the quality of my life, but they're just simply not there. Doesn't matter the model, company, or anything like that. I've played around with these transformer-based models long enough to be able to confidently say I don't believe I'll ever be able to lean on them with any actual trust, at least not for quality-oriented Rust development. I always give credit where credit is due, so one notable exception is front-end design, which is understandable considering the very predictive nature of HTML and CSS. Things like Cloud Code Assistant have definitely helped. For example, one time I ended up going through about 18 months, 14,000 US and 6 designers, just to end up with a design that was barely mediocre. Whereas with Cloud Code Assistant, it was $7 in 2 days, and at least from what I've been told, the Cicero.sh site looks great, so that has definitely helped. However, my point still stands on actual software engineering, so let's go ahead and debunk the hype. One main issue with these LLMs is they simply don't have any common sense. I'm sure we've all worked with someone before who just isn't quite all there. You know, the guy who fills up the gas truck with diesel, that type of guy. That's kind of what working with these models is like. For example, I had a dataset that was processed through 4 different pipelines and simply wanted to do a quick 3 or 4 consensus score on it, then mark the valid records in a SQL database. Pretty straightforward, right? Now, by applying a little bit of common sense to this task, it's pretty obvious only about 10 megabytes of data need to be in memory at any given time. However, these LLMs, because they're stupid and don't have any common sense, will just scoop up the full contents of all four datasets, totaling about 193 gigabytes of data, shove it all into memory, and crash the machine. This type of thing is non-stop and happens over and over again. So you're either stuck treating these LLMs like a 6-year-old watching their every step, or you simply accept a bunch of dysfunctional and inefficient code. Many people emphatically claim, oh, having an AI assistant is amazing. It's like having a junior or mid-level developer at your side 24/7, always ready, never complains, and codes blazingly fast. I guess this is somewhat true, especially from an outside perspective. But if you're actually working with these things on project-based development, I think the more realistic analogy is it's like working with a temp agency who gives you a brand new developer every day who you've never met before and has no clue about your project. This is both frustrating and a huge time sink because now you're stuck retraining the assistant every single day. Granted, you could keep a set of training prompts updated in real time as development progresses, but that's just wholly impractical and infeasible. For an even clearer example, just simply have the same in-depth conversation with one of these LLMs every day for 2 weeks, and I can almost guarantee you'll end up with multiple different assistants during that time period. Another thing that LLMs can't and probably never will do is be capable of generating novel thoughts or conceptualizing the architecture and design of a decent-sized system. For example, I was designing a client-server architecture for Cicero actually, and was using a LLM to help because this brainstorming part I do actually find quite useful. Just that simple feedback loop to help clarify my thoughts is quite nice. It's not coming up with any new ideas or anything, although we'll sometimes throw out a related suggestion based on the prompts I give it, but for the most part it's just being agreeable because that's what it's programmed to do. Landed on a Rust-based TLS server with self-signed certificate for the REST API, plus a non-secure WebSocket server that communicates over AES GCM with DHkey exchange to secure that channel, along with a message bus that is pulled every 100 milliseconds to ensure safe and problematic-free multi-threaded writes. If you don't understand what I just said, don't worry about it at all, it doesn't matter. I actually asked the LLM, so what would have happened if I didn't know what the hell I was doing? And it truthfully replied, saying more than likely ended up with some simple, single-threaded, non-secure HTTP server developed in Flask or similar. And this is a prime example as to why these things are not going to be replacing actual engineers anytime soon. You need to know the relevant technologies because these things are simply predictive systems that will never volunteer crucial information to you, and instead will always just respond based on the neurons fired due to the prompts that you give it. So if you don't know the right prompts to give it, you're just going to end up with a bunch of low-quality piecemeal garbage. Another large issue with these systems is they simply have no grounded perception as to what actual quality is, or at least not like a human does, and instead they only know the patterns that are within their training data. So it's always a complete hit or miss with these things, as it all depends on the prompts you give it and the patterns it finds within its training data. Sometimes you get nice clean and readable code, and other times you get 200-line functions that are an absolute mess of closures within closures that you can't even read, leaving you to either once again babysit the LLMs like a 6-year-old or simply accept low quality and unmaintainable code. I'm not even sure why big tech is trying to outright replace developers like this anymore. Maybe they actually believe in their own delusions, or maybe they just simply don't give a shit anymore. Who knows, but I can't see this ending well for them, and I can only see them shooting themselves in the foot. The only way this happens is if AI is 100% accurate 100% of the time and never creates a bug, security vulnerability, memory leak, or design flaw that it can't resolve itself. And for anyone who's used these systems for a while, you know that's simply not happening. Then when the AI does screw up, a human will need to get called in, and they probably won't be overly happy to begin with for having to clean up after the AI. And they'll have to sift through hundreds, if not thousands, of files of AI-generated code to figure out what the hell the LLM did. And this will cause all the problems I mentioned previously to bubble to the surface, and they'll end up requiring a major refactoring, if not complete rewrite of the entire code base. I think this whole thing is just a tinderbox waiting to go up in flames. Considering all the hype, there's obviously something coming down the pipes, and although I can't foresee the future, let me give you some ideas what you can probably expect. I would imagine a nice, slick, user-friendly, online integrated development environment with Slack-based communication. We'll probably have various compilers and interpreters built right into it for iterative development and bug fixes. More than likely, we'll automatically develop out unit tests to ensure business logic is there and working correctly, and we'll integrate flawlessly with various development tools like Git, Docker, and things of that nature. Then, of course, it'll come with a flashy, hyped up marketing demo making it sound like the best goddamn thing ever invented. And the thing is, I'm sure it will actually work great for non-developers and small basic operations. Things like a simple brochure site, small e-commerce store, listing or gallery site, real estate web portal, and things of that nature it'll probably work fine for. Essentially, anything a seasoned developer can do without thought and by second nature, it'll probably be able to take care of. However, I'm confident anything above and beyond that, it'll just completely fall apart for all the reasons I previously mentioned. Not to mention, these systems always defer to the simplest solution, so whatever they come out with will always be rather low quality and brittle. If you were to believe the hype, you would think AGI is already here. ASI and Singularity is right around the corner, so just don't worry, sit back, let Daddy Big Tech take care of everything, and pretty soon we'll all be living in utopia and some bullshit age of abundance or whatever it is they're pitching these days. However, that's just not the case, and the tech just simply isn't there. We're still on the Transformers architecture, and although there's many people out there smarter than me, I'm now confident until we flip off this architecture, this tech is probably about as good as it's getting. As long as it remains on Transformers, I can't see it ever getting things like common sense, intuition, novel thought generation, grounded worldview based in physics, proper contextual awareness, and any of the other things that would make it actually possible to replace software developers or even use as a proper assistant for that matter. So I don't know about you, but for me at least, I'm very confident it's in my best interest to keep my skills sharp, and I intend to do just that. Thanks so much for listening, I do appreciate it. Please make sure to check out Cicero.sh for the Cicero project to drop our dependence on big tech through open source innovation. The latest iteration of the Sophia NLU, or Natural Language Understanding Engine, is open source and available for download. Also, I don't use social media, so if you're by chance feeling generous enough to share this on your feeds, that would be greatly appreciated. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.